Hey everyone, I'm on a bikepacking trip on northern Vancouver Island at the moment, and I'm going to show you how I pack for this trip. Every time I go on a bikepacking trip it does change a little bit, but this is because I'm so remote in Canada and the weather's a little bit difficult here. This is actually the most I would ever pack on my bike, so it's a good time to look through my kit and show you how I pack. So here we go. Right, so starting with the bike itself, this is my Shand Stooshie, which I've been riding for 2 years now. We've done 5 continents together. Her name's Goonie. For those of you who don't name your bikes, I'm really sorry that you don't have a heart, but this bike and I spent quite a lot of time alone. So Shand Stooshie, it's a steel bike made in Scotland, carbon forks. What I like about this bike is that there's clearance for, these are my 650B tires, which I would use out here because it's more of a gravel and not a bikey ride. But there's clearance for 700C tires. So this same bike, I've done the Silk Road race, the Atlas Mountain race, as well as the Transatlantic Way and all points north. Like I said, 5 continents. So I've had a lot of different iterations of setting up this bike. So I know that getting a bikepacking bike is a huge investment and you gotta decide what kind of bike's gonna serve you the best, but I do think these gravel adventure category is kind of the N+1 hack. I like riding drop bars just because for me, long days I do find it more comfortable to be on drop bars than to be on flat bars. Obviously with flat bars you can carry a lot more, but you know, I'm just comfortable on drop bars, so I prefer them. So my cockpit setup, I really like the aero bars even if I'm not racing, just because it's a lot more comfortable. They're a really good place to hang stuff. You can just put some straps on here and like chuck your sandwiches or whatever. Obviously I keep my navigation there too, so I put everything on the Wahoo before I go. But this is a quad lock for my phone. It's really nice if you're kind of going through town or you're changing your route, which I do all the time, so I might pop Komoot on there and then just follow my phone for a little bit. The Apidura top tube bag, it's waterproof, and that's where I'll keep my essentials, so like phone, camera, headphones, wallet, that kind of stuff. Just really easy access. Food pouches. I've had a lot of different things in my food pouches over the years. This is the first time having bear spray in one of them, but out here on North Vancouver Island there's certainly a lot of hungry bears around this summer. So bear spray and a whistle at the ready. And the right hand one is almost invariably full of candy. I would never tell my dentist what really goes in there, but that's my trough for the daily food. It's just really easy to kind of be able to grab stuff and keep going. But like I said, I'm always changing what goes in here. The bikepacking bags that I'm using are Apidura. They're fully waterproof, which just makes life so much easier because you don't, I think when I started bike touring I always was obsessed with plastic and putting everything in roll bags and having to waterproof every little thing. But with these ones you can literally just chuck stuff in and it's completely fine, and it makes life so much easier. So start with the front roll bag. I do have the extra pouch that goes in front, and there I'm just going to keep everything that I'm using day to day. So there's pretty much just Cliff Bars in there right now, but that's also where I'll chuck my rain jacket, gloves, maybe just whatever I'm kind of using throughout the day that I want easy access to. In the roll bag on my bars is where I keep my sleeping bag as well as my tent, except for the poles, so everything's just compressed really tightly in there because that's something I'm never going to need during the day, so it just makes sense to put that on your handlebars. So in my frame bag is where I keep kind of everything that I'm going to need day to day. So like maybe cables. This is where I keep my tripod. Every single video I've ever posted on YouTube about a solo trip, there's been some angry guy who's always commenting, oh, it must not be solo because there's a cameraman. Meet my cameraman, it's a tripod, duh. I've also, this is where most of my tools are, so they're just in a little bag there. Chain lube, a light if I end up out too late. A little, just like a dinky lock. Like obviously it's not the biggest bike lock in the world, but it's just kind of nice to stop opportunistic theft. Vancouver Island's biggest wildlife problem is actually the mosquitoes, so there's some mosquito repellent there. Straps and stuff in case I need to put anything on the bike. And this is like a small backpack from Epidur that's waterproof and folds up obviously really small. So if I go to a shop and pick anything up, like if I'm going to a really remote segment, it's just really handy to always have a bag like that around. So saddlebag again, fully waterproof. Try not to keep it too heavy just because it does throw off the weight of the bike a little bit. I should point out that I'm not super full at the moment just because I just got to a town, so there's not a lot of supplies in here, so there's a bit of extra space. Rain jacket, keep it quite handy. Little bag full of electronics, so my battery, my cables, a plug. It's nice to keep that handy because if you do stop somewhere that you can get things charged, you want to do that right away. These are all my spare clothes, that's it. Kind of compress them down into a little bag, so it's just some thermal tights and some spare socks. And that's really all I find I need. Insulated Gore-Tex gloves. Even in the summer, the weather here can really roll in on you, so having a nice pair of gloves to keep you going, quite important. Pack everything down pretty tight. Toiletry bag, obviously just the essentials. Down jacket. Obviously having good insulation, being able to keep yourself warm is pretty important. And I kind of stuff it in there to keep everything nice and neat so your bag's not saggy. The poles to my tent. I don't always stay in a tent. I actually normally would bivvy, but out here on Vancouver Island, there's obviously a bit more trouble with the weather being really unpredictable and really remote. So if it does start to be an absolute downpour, you're pretty stuck. But obviously the biggest problem out here is the bugs and getting lots of bites. So I'm sleeping in a tent for this trip, but normally I would just bivvy. Tin mug, essential bike packing tool. Freeze-dried food, I did make my own. Water filter. Stove pot, it's got tea and coffee all in there, and the fuel is also tucked up inside there. Sleeping mat, really minimal one. It's maybe not the most comfy thing in the world, but you know, you can't really beat the size. And then stuffed away at the back are the spare tubes and also some rope to make my bear hang. Again, that's kind of unique to this trip. So that's my bikepacking setup. Like I said, it does change based on where I'm going and what bike I'm taking and what I'm up to, but that's the most I would ever take on a trip. Any questions, let me know in the comments.